morning. It's a pleasure to be here today and to have the opportunity to interact with so many that share a passion for science, for education, and for empowering our youth, educators, and the public to really embrace, to understand, and to engage with science. I'd like to thank WorldCam First Name Basis, Matt, Eileen, and the rest of their team for organizing a phenomenal workshop today and for providing myself and others the opportunity to share some of the exciting programming that we've been involved with related to advancing what we do in the science field and engaging our youth in particular in these areas. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to highlight two specific programs that I've had the good fortune to be involved with. And these programs center around providing opportunities for teachers and their students to engage in inquiry-based science using first-hand experience and discovery. And then also the intent was to have them develop an appreciation for how science impacts their daily life. I hope that my comments this morning will serve as a catalyst for sharing your experiences, exploring new opportunities in programming, and then also developing new partnerships for advancing our shared goals. So the two programs I'm going to highlight are the RZOO2U program, and then a second program, Soybeans in the Classroom, which is really a research experience program for teachers. So these programs share at least two common elements, and the first element is that they've been partnerships, as Matt mentioned. There are partnerships between scientists and science educators, and then whenever possible, we reach out to the broader community to get them engaged, because many of us have these shared goals, and we know that we can move it along further if we partner through these efforts. The second element of these programs is that they're all grounded in inquiry-based science, and I think we all recognize the importance of inquiry-based science. It's been shown to be a powerful way to understand content, particularly in the sciences. We know that it helps to enhance student performance. It improves attitudes towards science, and I hope today some of the examples I share with you convey that message. It fosters scientific literacy, and because students and others are engaged in doing science, it actually helps them to develop an appreciation for what we know in the sciences and about the nature of science. So let's first begin with the RZOO2U program. So this was a unique partnership among Nebraska schools, science educators, scientists, and the Lincoln Children's Zoo. And the overall goal of this project was to engage teachers and their students in inquiry-based science using live animals, and in this case, animals that were on loan from the Lincoln Children's Zoo. And our program focused on both outcomes from the teacher's perspective as well as the perspective from the students. So, this program emerged from discussions with the Lincoln Children's Zoo regarding their Critter Encounter exhibit, as well as an interest to expand their outreach mission beyond the 6 months that the zoo was opened. And to give you a little bit of background about Critter Encounter, it's a highly interactive exhibit in which visitors have the opportunity to come up close and personal with these animals. And so you can imagine when the zoo is closed, there's a lot of animals that need attention. And so we thought one way that we could get those animals the attention was to connect them with students that are out in the classrooms. It was also a way to infuse inquiry-based science into the learning by having them ask questions about these animals and design their own explorations in that. So the zoo decided to loan these animals out to the classroom, and this started the program, RZOO2U. And so participating classrooms each year received 4 different types of animals from the zoo. And these animals resided in their classroom for 6-week periods of time, and then they would rotate out and they would get another animal. And each year we had 20 classrooms that participated in this program. And so each classroom would receive some type of mammal, a type of reptile, a type of arthropod, and a bird. Okay, and up here just shows you some of the examples of the many animals that were visiting these classrooms throughout the school year. One of the key components of this program was the focus on professional development for the teachers. Obviously, this is a big undertaking by these teachers because they are taking these precious animals and now they are responsible for their overall well-being. And then we're also asking them to really engage your students in this process of inquiry and discovery. So we launched the program with an orientation workshop that provided them with a basic overview of the program, as well as we touched upon Animal Biology 101. Some of them knew nothing about how to care for a snake. They knew nothing about the biology of having a cockroach in their classroom. We also touched upon animal handling and care, because obviously we did not want these animals to just be in the cages the entire time. We wanted them to be out roaming in the classroom. We wanted the students to be able to handle them and ask questions about them. So it was really important that the teachers had a comfort level with these animals. And the teachers did a great job, but what we also recognize is not everyone is going to warm up to a hissing cockroach, like I'm going to, being an entomologist. Not everyone's going to warm up to having a python in their classroom. And so we worked with the teachers on this, but what we wanted to ensure that whatever animal went into their classroom, they could engage with, because we thought the worst thing we can do is have a snake in the classroom. The teacher's like, yeah, the snake's really cool, but we're not getting it out of the cage, right? Because then that would leave a negative impact on their students. And then a big piece of these workshops also focused on science as inquiry. So once the school year started, we brought the teachers back every quarter, in which we did follow-ups on these various topics, but we really hit hard this process as science as inquiry, because for many of them, this was a change in the way that they approached their science instruction. So one of the keys to the success of this program, and I think something that I've learned in the outreach that I've been doing with schools, whether it be through formal or informal science education, is you want to try to make it connect for the teachers. They already have an overstuffed curriculum. And so if you're there asking them to add one more thing onto it, it's not going to be embraced by them. Rather, we should be looking at ways how we can partner to advance our shared goals. So we started out with connecting, obviously, to the science standards, because that was the ones that we knew the most about. But in our first year, the teachers were very creative. They liked using the animals for instruction. And they're like, we don't want to just use them only for science. And so they explored ways that they could connect with character education, because again, the students were responsible for the care of these organisms. We also found that they could connect with English language arts. Over time, we were also connect on the side of mathematics too. So at the start of the school year, the animals were introduced into the classroom. This was a very exciting time for the students and everyone else at the school, because there was great anticipation about what animal would be joining their classroom. As the school year progressed, we had mixed feelings as the animals were coming into the classroom. They were still very anxious to see what would be the next animal that would visit them, but at the same time, they had become emotionally attached to these animals that were in their classroom for 6 weeks, and sometimes they didn't want to give them up. And so that was a bit of a struggle sometimes, but we reassured them that when the zoo opened back up, they would be able to go back to Critter Encounter, and they could visit with those animals, and they could follow what was happening with them. And so here you can see just how much the students embrace these animals. Here we have a couple of students handling Yoda, the python, the ferret over there, and then this is one of our zoo professionals who was out there with a legless lizard. But the students had no fear, right? And they had a lot of curiosity, and so that's really what we wanted to capture through this program. So the students and the teacher had to be responsible for all animal care. So this meant feeding the animals, this meant grooming the animals. To get at analytical things, to get at mathematics, they also had to weigh the animals each day, and they had to basically take just some of their normal condition parameters so that they could relate those back to the zoo. So then we had a website set up that was interactive, where the students plugged in the information, the zoo could see that information, and the zoo could make sure that the animals were doing perfectly fine under the care of these students. And I'm happy to report this program, we had it going for 6 years, and there was never any harm done to any of the animals that participated in the program. The zoo did come visit the classrooms periodically, and this was again just to connect with the animals, just to make sure everything was going well, and then also really to be a resource for the students. So the whole focus of this program again was to engage the students. So we felt that having these live animals on loan from the zoo, how cool is that, right? That this would pique the students' curiosity and they'd be starting to ask questions. And so rather than just simply answering the questions as the teacher or me as the scientist that was visiting the classroom or as the zoo professional, rather we told the student, hey, that's a really cool question. How can you design an experiment to figure out the answer to that? And so students throughout the school year were engaged in this inquiry-based science. And so I'm going to show you some of the examples of the investigations that they did. So obviously they were very fascinated with what do the animals eat. And so here's an example of a couple of those. So you have Picasso, the guinea pig here. And they set up very simple experiments. It doesn't matter how complicated they are, it's that they were going through the process of discovery. And so they gave them choices, carrot and orange pellets. Hey, what is Picasso like, right? And so they go through these series. They also were equally interested in Millie the millipede and wanting to know what her food source was. And then the interesting thing is that they tried to make connections among the animals. So if you recall, they had 4 different types of animals in their classroom. And so they would say, well, Picasso liked this. Does Millie also like some of the same food sources? And then maybe when they got their python in, they asked some questions about that and then about the bird. And so it was really cool because they were making these comparisons and they were identifying differences among their food preferences. They also were very interested in the overall biology of these animals. And one thing that they hit upon was life cycles, and that's because for some of the classrooms, that was the focus of their science instruction for that particular quarter. And I do like insects. I love arthropods. I'm being an entomologist. But mealworms were the perfect organism to be utilized for studying the life cycles. As you all know, arthropods have a relatively short life cycle compared to the python or compared to the birds that they might be having. And so students were just fascinated how these worm-like structures, in the time that they had them, could turn into a beetle. And they wanted to know more about how that life cycle worked. And they were fascinated that they went through this process of molting, where they shed their exoskeleton, produced a new one, so that way they could grow bigger in size and ultimately move throughout their life cycle in that. And so they did a lot of different inquiries based upon the biology and on the life cycles. They also wanted to explore the behavior of these organisms. So here's an example where we had a first grade classroom and they set up a maze, and although you cannot see, right here resides Lewis the dove, and they wanted to figure out if Lewis can navigate a maze. And so they go through a series of investigations on this, and then they decide maybe if they scatter Lewis's food source around the maze, maybe Lewis will be able to complete the maze more effectively. And so again, another example about how they're testing different aspects of the behavior. And then, this was fun for me to see, the kids even warmed up to the hissing cockroaches. And so they had a lot of questions about hissing cockroaches. How do they hiss? Why do they hiss? And then they would hold them and they would stick to their hands and they wanted to know what's going on here. What's going on with the legs of these organisms that make them be able to do this? And so they were able to do a lot of their investigations through hands-on discovery, but then they also utilized the web, right, to explore in greater detail. And then they had support coming in from the zoo, from science educators, from scientists, in which we were able to build upon what they were learning in the classroom. So in the 6 years that this program is offered, and we had funding through the Eisenhower Professional Development Program, as well as a grant from the Institute of Museum and Library Studies, it cost us about anywhere between $80,000 to $100,000 to deliver this program each year. And some of that was simply because of the food and the upkeep related to the animals, also the stipends that we were offering for the teachers. We had a very robust evaluation program in that also. And in those 6 years, we reached over 150 classrooms. We had connected with first grade classrooms, fourth grade classrooms, and eighth grade classrooms, because this is where we found it best to align with the science curriculum, which was our overall focus. In that time, over 100 teachers participated in our professional development programming also. But many, many more were impacted by this. In the schools where the animals were at, we had students from other classes coming in before school, after school, because they wanted to learn about the animals. They wanted to help care for them. And then on weekends, the animals became house guests with the students and their parents because somebody needed to take care of them. So then the learning was extended beyond the walls of the classroom. And one family, I remember telling me that in the weekend that they had over like 50 guests come through because they had ball python and everybody wanted to see that ball python. So it was an engaging time. Through our evaluations over that 6 years, we were able to document that it really was an effective way to engage students in doing inquiry. It was a huge motivational factor for these students and even for the teachers. It was a way to connect with the life sciences as well as we found beyond the life sciences, and then a way to incorporate, as I was getting at, the science across the curriculum. In addition to this, we focused on just the teacher outcomes. Efficacy with inquiry-based science improved. Teacher attitudes towards teaching science also improved. And we saw the same thing with the side of the students. The students understood inquiry-based science, how we know what we know, and they were excited to do science. Another outcome related to this was the establishment of a permanent exhibit at our Lincoln Children's Zoo that is referred to as Inside the Hive. And this features a variety of arthropods. Arthropods that you would find in your own backyard to all over the world. And over the time that it's been in place, it also now has a variety of other small animals. And so we're really trying to mimic what we were doing with the RZDU program and having a permanent footprint at the Lincoln Children's Zoo. And so in all cases, visitors are the scientists. And there are bug buddies that are there within this exhibit. And this way, they have the opportunity, visitors do, to interact firsthand with all the different organisms there. I hate going to a zoo where you see all these live arthropods and these small animals, and they're behind the glass, right? And no one can interact with them. And so this was a way that you could go in and you could spend hours there just holding the different animals and asking questions. And we always have some type of inquiry that's taking place at that point in time so that visitors can participate in that process of ongoing discovery. And again, I'm showing you some examples of some of the funding resources that we got just to plant some ideas there. But through this program, we were also able to obtain a grant through the Institute of Museum and Library Studies to provide the funding to establish this particular exhibit. All right, so that's an overview of the RZDU program. Now I'd like to shift gears and tell you about a second program. And the second program is Soybeans in the Classroom, and this is really what we refer to as an RET, or Research Experience for Teachers. I think that we would all agree that there's never been a more important time than now for our youth, for our educators, and for the public to understand the role that agriculture plays in their daily lives, right? We do have some great challenges ahead, such as feeding an additional 2.4 billion people that are predicted to be here by the year 2050. In addition to this grand challenge, there's a lot of misconceptions out there among our youth, among the public in general, about how their food is produced and where their food comes from. For example, we know that some youth think that milk comes from the grocery store and that cows produce eggs. Unfortunately, some of their parents share those same misconceptions. Then we have a disconnect, right, with our youth and agriculture from the standpoint that less than 1.5% of the people in the U.S. live on farms. So how do we expect them to understand the role that agriculture is playing in their lives if we're not more intentional about it? And then you connect agriculture with STEM. And frankly, we need those that are interested in STEM to pursue agriculture and to want to be in careers that are linked with agriculture. Because in my mind, agriculture is STEM, right? We're not set off on the side. We are STEM, and we need those that are excited about these areas to be invested in career opportunities within agriculture. So that's my little soapbox, given that I'm an entomologist, study plant-insect interactions in the College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources. But really, it's a true need, right? And through this need, we developed the program, Soybeans in the Classroom. And this has really served as a transformative model of education and professional development. And it's focused on 3 specific areas. Number 1, the idea of a systems approach. So you're looking at things from a holistic viewpoint. So if you do this to the system, what happens to all the other components of the system? Not just focusing more on a linear perspective. Again, the emphasis on science as inquiry. And then trying to develop ways in which we can infuse agricultural systems into science education and really beyond that science curriculum in K through 12 schools. So, with this program, as teachers participate in it, they gain the tools and the knowledge to educate their youth on, number one, the role that soybeans play in their lives, the impact of soybeans, both locally as well as globally, and then obviously that's extended into just the very essence of what agriculture does for the U.S., for the world, and for them personally. And then again, a big emphasis on the teachers will have the skill sets to engage their students in this process of discovery and hands-on learning. So, one important key feature, like the RZBU, is the attention to the professional development program for the teachers. So through this professional development program, teachers would spend 3 weeks on campus at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln working alongside scientists. And through this process, they would learn about the soybean system, again, from a holistic approach. They'd also learn about innovations in agriculture and science areas beyond agriculture. And then more importantly, they would become the scientists. And they would learn that science is not just simply a collection of facts that's housed in a textbook or on the internet that can be searched, but rather it's this ongoing process of discovery. They would also work with my colleague, Dr. John Peterson, who is a science educator, and he would help them develop strategies for how they could take this 3-week experience that they were having and enjoying so much, and how could they replicate that into their classroom so that their students could have the same experience. Again, the focus being on the inquiry aspect, using these agricultural systems, but again, we wanted to be very attentive to the idea that they already are struggling, right, to find enough time to be able to engage their students in science, and they have many opportunities. And so how can we help make things easier for them to address what they need to do at their local level, at their district level, at the state level, and at the national level? So as the teachers were replicating this experience in their classrooms, they had support from the following resources. Number one, they had support from the program itself. So we had scientists that would go out into the classrooms. They would also be available to the teachers if they said, you know, I'm really supposed to be focusing on this in my classroom, and I think I can connect it with soybeans, or I think I can connect it with an agricultural system. Can you help me sort through that? They'd also have support from science educators, as well as through the program, we had master science teachers, and those were individuals who had been through the program that were now really there to be mentors to those teachers that were just undergoing this first year in the program. We had a variety of lesson plans that were developed by teachers as an outgrowth of this program that were available on a website, mysoybean.org, as well as other online resources in that. And then we partnered with other educational entities. And so we were able to partner with Ag in the Classroom. Every state has an Ag in the Classroom program. Nebraska's Soybean Board is the one that initially provided funding for this program, and then we were able to partner that with the United Soybean Board because we've extended it to other states on this model of delivery. And so the state soybean boards were very, very helpful, have a lot of resources that are out there, but if you don't have an understanding of the soybean system and you don't have experience in knowing how you can link that with your curriculum, you can't really utilize those resources in an effective way. So now they had tools to be able to do that. And then obviously also through Nebraska Extension, there were many opportunities to connect, to provide support to the teachers. So this program is in its 6th year of being offered, and again, we've had over 150 teachers that have participated. I see James Blake is here, and many of those teachers are from the Lincoln Public School Systems. We had a big target because we wanted to penetrate a school system that was more urban in nature and help these students find the connections with agriculture. We've also been able to connect with the Millard Public Schools, small schools around the Lincoln area, and then we had programming that was also going up in the northeast part of the state, which we were connecting on that part. And we've seen colleagues in Minnesota and Kansas now that have received support from their local soybean boards, and so they're in the process of delivering this program also. This program has emerged really as a unique model, right? As a way to use agricultural systems to teach science. And I think you could substitute out. It can be soybeans, it can be corn, it could be bee systems, it could be any one of these agricultural systems. But the key is to have local importance, because that way we can connect it to what's going on right around your students, what the impact is on their state, which is a little bit easier at these younger ages for them to make those connections with. It's a way to infuse an inquiry-based approach also. And I lifted up James a few minutes ago, but we've been so fortunate with the Lincoln Public Schools. Since 2010, we've provided soybean seeds, and they have circulated those soybean seeds to K through 2nd classrooms that wanted to use soybeans as their model system for their plant units that they were doing, particularly on the life cycle. So we were really excited about that because we saw these connections there. Student inquiries focused on all sorts of different aspects of the soybean system. Many were just learning about the life cycle. They also wanted to test what's the impact of dark and light conditions on how the soybean plant grows, nutrients, and so they loved watering, not using water, but a different substrate to see if soybeans would grow in the presence of Coca-Cola. That was a big one. Gatorade, milk. Sometimes our greenhouses would stink so bad. Teams were also replicating this, and I remember having to go down and put the liquid resource on the plants. And after about 2 weeks being in a greenhouse, it was 90 degrees in there, some of these plants became very stinky. But the kids wanted to see the impact that these nutrients had on them, and they just explored all sorts of different aspects related to that. So this program had a phenomenal impact on the students that were involved in it, as well as the teachers. And I want to highlight 2 specific examples that I think best capture the impact. The first one was a kindergarten student named Daniel. And Daniel's classroom was doing investigations on if we grow plants in the dark, what happens to them, versus if we grow them in the light, right? So at the conclusion of their experiment, I came back out to visit with them to find out what you find. Why do you think that this was happening? And Daniel, right here is Daniel, and he was so excited to tell me what he knew. He just could not wait for me to call on him. So I called him. And he's like, well, Tiffany, plants produce their food. And this is why they can't grow very long in the dark. And so he started to walk me through this entire process. Now, he did not understand Rubisco or anything like that, but he got the big idea about photosynthesis. And he knew that plants make their own food by capturing this energy from the sun and converting it into the sugars. I don't know about you, but I was blown away by this because Daniel was 5 years old. And I was thinking back to myself, I don't think I really understood that maybe until freshman biology. And here he is as a kindergartner, and he's getting it. But it demonstrates the power of inquiry, right? And what they're able to do when they have the chance to discover things firsthand for themselves. The second example is up here. This is a 4th grade class. Let's shoot. It doesn't have a laser, does it? Okay, 4th grade classroom right up here. And with this classroom, a parent told me this story, that they were going out of town for the weekend. They were driving along the road, and all of a sudden the student says, Dad, we need to pull the car over. And the dad wondered why they needed to pull the car over. They were going to Kansas City to do a fun weekend. Why did he want to delay getting there? Well, the student said, that's a soybean field back there. And so he proceeded to tell his family about soybeans. And the dad said, it wasn't good enough just to learn about soybeans from the car. We had to get out of the car. We had to go to the soybean field so we could touch him. So he could tell us everything that he knew. And I was like, how cool. The dad's like, no, we were late. And I was like, this student was connecting something that they were learning in the classroom. They were connecting it outside of the classroom and to the real world. Again, another way that we can see the power of inquiry as science. Another outcome of this program was the development of Ag in the City curriculum. And so this program was primarily targeted towards elementary teachers. But there was a teacher, Mr. Kevin Atterberg, who maybe some of you know, who was really excited about wanting to be a part of this program. So we said, okay, we'll give it a try. We'll let a middle school teacher in there. We'll see what they can work through this. So after participating in the workshop, Summer Institute, he became very excited about wanting to transform his middle school 7th grade biology curriculum to utilize soybeans. And so he went through this process. He got approval from James Blake, he got approval from his principal. And so every Tuesday became Ag in the City Day. And he taught biology through the lens of soybeans. And so through that program, it had such a profound impact on his students. When I went in there at the start of the semester, they thought the only thing that you could do in agriculture was become a farmer. At the end, these were the ideas that they were generating about the connection actions of agriculture. So extremely powerful. Because of the impact of this program, we are now working with the Nebraska Soybean Board, with Lincoln Public Schools to redesign what our focus is going to be for the Soybean Summer Science Institute. Now to focus on middle school so we can see how we can make those types of connections and expand the impact that we have. So I guess, Matt, do I have time? This is truly a lightning round. Or they can do it during their break?
So we're a little bit over, but...
Okay, all right. So just to make sure we're on time, and I'm sorry about this, as you're having your break, here's an idea, okay? And so this is connecting with what Matt talked about wanting to let the broader community know about the discussions that we're having here, right? So as you're out on your break, try to connect with someone that you don't know. Share an experience or a program that you've been involved with. Share a new idea that you have, maybe from last night's activity or maybe something that you've been thinking about and you want to visit with some others. And then take those ideas and then tweet them out so that the rest of the broader community can have an impact and see what we're talking about here. So again, thank you very much, and I apologize for the time. I'm just so excited about this different program.